the 5 suckiest things about New York?
Yes, I can right away. It smells, it rains, you have to walk everywhere, people are mean, there are a lot of people everywhere, it's dirty.
I think the strange thing is when you watch a movie or all these TV shows about New York, it's always so New York, we love New York, we love that city, and you never hear stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it's easy if you have a lot of money, like you can drive everywhere, or you can have a driver, but if you have to like schlep around and go on the subway and like walk, it's such a pain in the ass.
Why did you become a comedian here in New York especially? Because I think it's really tough, that scene here.
Everything's hard here. I went to college here and I just had always lived here, so it was kind of, I didn't think of moving anywhere else, really. Like, I'm not going to go to Chicago and start. But then after I went to college, I worked for a publishing company, and it was just boring. So I had to start performing, and so I just did it where I was. Yeah. And I think it's a good comedy scene here.
I have the feeling it's really thriving, that, like, here's a lot, especially young comedy. Here's a lot going on. Could you describe that?
Yeah, so I've been doing it for 6 years here. I took my first class here at the Upright Citizens Brigade 6 years ago, next month. And when I started it, it was a very small community, like everyone knew each other, but now it's huge. Like every year we have auditions to perform on Tuesday nights for this thing called the Herald Team, which is like a house team. And when I started, like 300 people would audition for like 8 slots, which is a lot. But now this year, 550 people auditioned for like 8 slots, which is insane. But I think it's like little things here and there where you're like, oh, this person came from the Upright Citizens Brigade. Like we have 2 people on the office right now that, like, when I started the theater, they were still performing here, Zach Woods and Ellie Kemper. So it's like, and Ellie was in Mean Girls, so it's like, all over the place, our people are doing it and writing and stuff. So I think if you're like living somewhere else and you're like, oh, I want to do comedy, that seems like a path, like the easiest path to come here and do comedy. Though I think that there are many ways to do it.
Yeah. And what does it mean for your work as a comedian?
Well, improv, like at the UCB, their thing is don't think. That's kind of their motto, and
that's tough.
It's hard when you're doing like half an hour of like made up stuff. You gotta be thinking a lot. But what it means, I think, is don't overthink it and just do kind of like react honestly in the moment to what's going on around you. So that's what I try to do when I'm doing improv. And then even when I'm doing stand-up, my stuff comes from a place of like honesty, like this is what I'm really feeling. It's hard, but like that's the kind of comedy I relate to. If I see somebody on stage and I'm like a stand-up and they're talking about stuff and I'm like, that didn't happen to you, then I'm like you're lying right now, then I can't find it funny.
What is so special about the UCB?
The UCB has always just felt like this like renegade, like bunch of weirdos. So I feel like I fit in. And
you're hosting this ladies only open mic night. Why is it important to have a ladies only thing?
Oh my god. All the open mics that I would go to, there's like 1 woman or 2 women, and it's hard to be, men laugh at different things, I think, than women laugh at. So if you want to do a joke that's gonna get a laugh, you're kind of playing to them. But if you're gonna be honest to yourself and what you think is funny, you might not necessarily get a laugh. And not getting the laugh can be really painful. So I wanted to create an environment that was a little bit softer for women and a little bit more open to different senses of humor. because a lot of open mics here in the city are like really difficult and intense.
And do you have like an example for that?
I was doing a show at the Pit Tuesday night. I did a book show and I did 10 minutes of stand-up. I was really happy with, I was pretty happy with my set. I was happy with my set and I got off the stage and I got, like, it seemed like people liked it. And then my friend Anna, who co-hosts the mic with me, was like, let's stay for the open mic at the Pit. They have an 11 o'clock open mic there. And I was like, all right. So I stayed and there were about 15 men and maybe 4 women, which is a lot for a mixed open mic. And I did some of the same material and it didn't get any laughs. I was like, what is your problem? I know this shit is funny. Like, I know it's funny. I just did it downstairs. And so it's hard. Like, I got off and I wanted to like rip off my skin. It's hard. And then I went out to the lobby in the bar and these girls that we had been on the show with were like, oh, such an honor to do that show with you. It was so great, blah, blah, blah. I was like, if you only knew what just happened in that mic, like, it's so different.
Are they like not open to that?
It seems like the things that they laugh at and have to do with like sex and dicks and racism and stuff like that, which is not my style at all. Yeah, because when I tell, like, I have a couple things that are now like getting on the vulgar side, those things always get a big laugh. So that's what it is.
What really changes then when you're here in that open mic?
I think that there's just so much more to talk about. And women don't talk about that really.
Yeah.
And the women who do talk about that stuff are doing it because they're used to having male audiences. So here, everything's more interesting. All the sets are like fascinating to me usually because people are talking about real stuff that is also funny, which I like. The material is just so different. And it's more welcoming, people laugh more.
When you feel somehow safe, then you can open up yourself way more.
Yeah, it definitely, this mic helps me feel more confident and safe as a performer because I'm like, well, if all these other mics, no one laughs at me, at least I come here and I know these people will laugh and it'll be cool, you know?
But when you get more and more successful in your stand-up career, eventually you have to go back to these dick stages, right?
I don't know, like, I think the goal is to do the same performance every time and not let that stuff affect you, like whether or not how people are perceiving your work affect you and just do the same stuff every time. So I think the more success you get, the easier it is for you to just leave it on the stage and not bring it into yourself and let it affect you, if that makes sense.
Would you say that the scene here, especially around female comedians, is very supportive of each other?
Yeah, definitely. And it's gotten more and more supportive. When I first started doing improv here, there weren't a lot of female improvisers, but now there's a ladies improv jam that happens once a month. There's a ladies variety show. So there's definitely more of an effort for women. And when I proposed this idea for this women's open mic, the artistic director was like into it, like right away. So I don't think it's like there's still a disproportionate number of male and female performers, but it's getting better.
Okay. Like New York or Brooklyn is somehow an issue for you, or the life here? Is that true? Is that a theme?
Yeah, I think so. When I went to college here, I lived in the financial district, and I was like, this is boring. And then I moved to Williamsburg right after college, and I just felt like it was like a home for me. Like I fit in there, and I really like the vibe there. I've lived there for so long. So it's just like a new hometown, I think. So it's important to me.
So what's Brooklyn like?
I think there's a Russian neighborhood, there's a Hasidic neighborhood, there's like a Park Slope. But Williamsburg, where I've lived for several years, has changed a lot. Now it's like real cool. But before it was like more, it was the cheap neighborhood, and now it's becoming the expensive neighborhood. But I like it because there's always like cool restaurants, and I always like very like a small town vibe. I always run into people I know, which I really like. It's really important.
Yeah, I have the feeling that area is very creative, and on the one hand, I think that's so inspiring, to have all these other people, but on the other hand, I think that must be really tough, because when everyone is doing something creative, it's like, how can you really, be seen then?
There's an issue of like people who take themselves too seriously with their art, which I just laugh at, and I think they're funny, like some musicians or performance artists or whatever. That's hilarious to me. And that doesn't make me feel anything other than laughs. But then there's the issue of like when you're like in a theater and everyone around you in the theater is creative all the time, that can feel tough sometimes. But I had a teacher, Shannon O'Neill here, who she says, eyes on your own paper. That's it. Like you don't get to compare to anybody else. Just eyes on your own paper. Do your own thing.
So, and that leads me to my next question: is like when you, how important is it for you that you produce your own material? That when you're doing stand-up, you write your own stuff. Then you're sometimes directing and writing for Brokelandia. So I was. Why are you doing that? Because many people say like, well, I want to perform, I'm a performer, that's it.
I can't just sit back and be like, all right, I'm waiting for the offers to come in. I don't have that luxury in my career right now, so maybe I will. But right now I'm doing that stuff so that I can get the exposure and so that I'm just feel like I can take an aggressive stance in my career and feel like I'm doing all that I can. At least in New York, you don't get a lot of auditions because there's not so much work here. So that when I'm doing my own work, it definitely does take a lot of energy and a lot of like time, but you have to know where to put your resources and what's going to give you the most exposure and what's going to be the most valuable to your career.
What's the most valuable for you?
Doing stand-up right now because I like just being me on a stage. Improv, you're on a stage with 8 other people, and I don't think that it gives you as much exposure as you can. So doing stand-up, anything written that I can have to take with me.
Is that something typical in New York to be such a, do-it-yourself lady?
I think so, because in LA it's not really like that. Everyone's always working here all the time and always doing stuff, and the people who get the good jobs are the ones who've like worked for 8 or 10 years to get to that place. So yeah, I think.
Yeah, but where does that come from?
I have OCD. So when I'm relaxing, I'm like, oh, there's something I'm not working on. What am I missing out on? Oh, So that's kind of how I work, and I don't know if I gravitate towards the city because I'm like that, or if the city makes me like that. And I think there are a lot of people here that share that mentality.
Yeah.
Here, for some reason, time goes by really quick. So they're quicker than anywhere else. Time and money, just go.
Yeah. Okay. Would you ever leave New York?
Absolutely.
And where would you go to?
LA. California.
I have one final question that goes.
Oh, I think you turned off.
Turned. Isn't it dead? Start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I want to be a part of it. New York, New York. If I can make it here, I'll make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York.